right, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. You are currently running for school board. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm Matt Dymoke. I'm currently serving as the chair of the Bloomington School Board. Was elected for the first time in 2021. When I was elected, I was the youngest ever representative elected to the board here in Bloomington. So it's been a fun 4 years of getting to serve a different perspective. During my day job, I serve as the Director of Development and Communications at ICA Food Shelf in Minnetonka, so helping to raise funds and share the story for food insecurity in our community.
Awesome.
And then outside of my day job stuff and my school board stuff, I also serve as the Assistant Director of the Show Choir program at Kennedy.
Awesome, that's great.
Yeah.
So give me a little bit of your background about what initially made you decide to run for school board.
Yeah, so I've been in education my whole life. Obviously, much of that as a student, but then I went to college to be a high school teacher. So I taught 11th and 12th grade social studies, world history, and government, and loved being in the classroom, but also wanted to explore things outside the classroom. So I went and worked at a college and served as a college advisor and helped raise money for student scholarships. And I've been coaching the Show Choir program for the last 7 years. And so being involved in education in so many different ways helped me think we should have some different voices at the board table helping to make decisions and bring forward some new, fresh ideas. And so that's why in 2021, I chose to run and have never looked back. It's been a great time.
All right, great. So it definitely sounds like you have some personal experience with the school system as well as some pseudo-professional volunteer experience as well. All of those things are definitely important. Also, participating in the school board is definitely a significant impact to the community. What do you think it is about your personality type that really kind of pushed you into the idea of public service?
Oh, that's a great question. So I am someone who's always been a connector. I like to get to know people, to build those relationships, see how we can mutually benefit each other and build a great relationship that we can help go then and help change the world around us. And so since I was a kid, that's the thing I liked to do. And so it felt sort of natural when I was thinking about how can I help impact what's going on in our school system and choosing to run for school board. It felt like, okay, I can do this because I can build relationships, I can talk to people, I can help advocate for people who aren't at the table, and that just feels like a really natural thing for me. And so having those questions, being curious, and getting to talk to people in and outside of the school system has really just been something that's been pretty easy for me to do.
Okay, all right. Well, let's kind of get into some of the vision of
Sure.
the Bloomington Public School. How do you kind of envision what the core mission of the public school system should be?
Yeah, so I think a public school system should be a system where every kid, regardless of their socioeconomic background or their racial background or their gender or sexuality, is able to come and have a welcoming, safe, and accessible place for them to learn. I think that's the whole reason behind public schools, is to be a space that every person can come in and to learn and to have access to the things that they need. So not just like, oh, here's a textbook, but like, here are the materials that we can help you to become the best 21st century learner that you can be. I think that's really what our public schools should be doing, is making it as accessible and welcoming for people across our community.
Okay, so you mentioned accessibility there. Obviously, a part of that is making sure that students are able to be successful in the academic environment. How do you measure that success beyond just test scores?
Yeah, I think test scores are just the surface of what we're really looking for when it comes to seeing if our students are learning. What I want to see is growth. I want to see our students come in September and walk out in June having learned a lot of things, being able to feel comfortable with the materials that they're learning. I want them to learn math. I want them to learn how to read. I want them to build these critical thinking skills. Sure. But I also want them to build life skills. I want them to build relationships with people. And so those things are a little harder to assess over a 9-month period of the school year. But I think that's part of what we're supposed to do in a school system, is to prepare our students for what life's going to be like when they're out of school. And a huge part of that is building those relationships and getting to feel like they know how to interact with people, how to problem solve, how to take a big problem and make it into a little smaller problems to help solve in different ways. And so assessing that is hard, which is why we have test scores, and have testing.
Yeah.
Which I don't love that that's our true measure right now and I don't believe it's our true measure of what our students are doing. But we have work to do there.
Okay, so you mentioned that one of the measures of success for the way that you approach the student body is their post-academic life. How do you think that the Bloomington Public School System is preparing the student body for that post-academic experience?
I think we're doing a good job. I think we can do better. So right now we have a lot of different pathways for people. They can go on these pre-college tracks where they can take honors, AP, DA courses where they're really preparing for life once they go on to a 2 or 4 year institution, grad school, doctoral school, etc. We also have the Bloomington College and Career Academy that helps prepare students for some of those ready to do jobs right after high school. So I think we have a lot of these options for people. I think part of it's that not every student knows that those options are available to them or that they're a good fit for it. And so I think we can do a better job of continuing to expand what those look like, to evaluate to see how do we do these things better, and also just tell our students, like, you can do this. You can be a carpenter if you want to, and here's a path to get there. You can also be a doctor, and here's a path to get there. And that we have those students coming out of Bloomington is something that I'm proud of, but we need to do a better job of getting them to see that they can do it.
Sure, absolutely. So that kind of brings us into some of the challenges and prioritizations for the Bloomington Public School District. What do you think are some of the most urgent challenges that are facing the school system today?
Yeah, I think the easiest one to point to is budget. It's hard to continue to expand programs and to really give as much one-on-one attention as we would want to students without the funds to do so. We're in a district that we're not building new houses. We're not expanding our reach as a district. And so we have to do with what the resources that we have in front of us.
Sure.
And so I think being creative, figuring out how we advocate at the state and federal level for more funds and different uses of the funds that we can get, I think is really important and will help us build a better school system for our students so that they can have access to the things that they need to. I also think that there's like how do I want to say this? There's a fight against public education right now. And so making sure that our students, our staff, our families know that we are committed to providing the best, most accessible, and widespread education for these students. So making sure that those students are able to come to school, they feel safe, they feel welcomed, they feel appreciated, they feel loved, is a really important thing that we need to focus on at all levels of our school system.
Sure. So as a chair for the school board, do you think that there would be a benefit in there being some sort of urban locked program for communities that are facing an issue where we can't build more houses, and so we're kind of limited to the families that we have available to us, to have some sort of state program to help commit funding for some of those urban locked communities?
Yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to explore what that looks like and how we could fit into that. We are a suburb of 90,000+ people, and people love to live here in Bloomington. I'm on a block where I bought my house from an original owner that built in 1956. People still live in my block who are original owners. We build a city that people want to live in.
Yeah.
And that is also hard when it has the flow of kids coming in for school. And so we have to figure out how we can keep our seniors loving their lives and living in the places they want to, and bringing in new families. And I think that I'm open to whatever programs that we should do.
So you mentioned that along those lines, budget is a constraint. How do you approach a good balance and distribution there to make sure that it doesn't result in staff shortages?
Yeah, and that's really tough. Any school district will tell you that their biggest expense is staff. And so as we have had to look at our budget reductions over the last several years, we've had to be really creative. The low-hanging fruit, as some may say, is long gone. We can't just, we can cut $1 million here and it's not going to impact any of our students or staff in any way. We're not living in that reality. And so I think the last couple of years we've had to be really creative, and part of that has had to do with conversations that we are able to have with building leaders and site leaders and families to figure out what do we need, how can we continue to make sure that we are funding the programs and projects that are really essential for our families and our students, and also getting creative in how we can implement new things and adjust with the times. Education is changing every day, and
Sure.
so we can't stay stagnant. But we also don't have piles of cash lying around in order to invest in all these new programs without some creativity. And so I think part of it is having those conversations here at the local level, but also we have great relationships with our state representatives and senators, and talking to them and figuring out how we can get more funding for certain projects here in Bloomington is really important. And I think something that I'm proud of the work that we've done as a board over the last couple of years, having those relationships, both at the state and the federal level.
Sure.
And I anticipate and I'm excited about what that can look like in the future, too.
All right. So, as you mentioned, Bloomington has 90,000 people. Yeah. There's quite an array of diversity. What measures do you feel that the school board is taking to make sure that no matter a person's background, everybody is given the same support and has the same opportunities?
Yeah, so I think part of that comes down to policy. As a school board, it's our job to make sure that we have policies that ensure that every student, every staff member, every family has an equitable access to what we're doing here in the buildings. And so, I think one example of that is there has been this fight over the last couple of years focused on gender inclusion and our LGBTQ students. As a board, we took it upon ourselves to create student and staff gender inclusion policies to make sure that those students, regardless of their sexual identity, gender identity, are able to come into our buildings and to receive the education that they deserve, or that they're able to come in and to teach our students or to work with our students with the dignity that they deserve.
Sure.
I think that's a great way for us as board members to really think about how we can change the direction of what we're going in society and how we can really help impact and make some real change. And so I think policy is a great way for us to do that. I also think outreach is a big part of the work that we're doing. And so I'm proud of our Office of Educational Equity, who spends all of their time and energy figuring out how they can best support some of our more racially diverse background students. That anyone who's coming into Bloomington, whether they live here, whether they're enrolling in here, whether they're immigrating here, has access to the resources that they need.
Sure.
And I think for us to make sure as a board that we're continuing to invest in those programs and projects is one of my top priorities.
So along those lines of making sure that everybody has the same opportunities, how do you go about making sure that education is ubiquitous? And what I mean by that is, how do you address students that potentially might feel disassociated from the educational process? Essentially, so if you have a student in a class that just isn't giving it them all, they're there because the government tells them they have to be there. How do you address that scenario?
I think that's a golden ticket question that I think that we're making some good progress on. I think part of it is figuring out that all these students who are coming to us have other things that are going on in their lives. And students now more than ever are experiencing things in their lives that are pushing their attention away from being in school. And so I think it's investing in mental health resources. I think it's investing in our counselors and in our social workers to make sure that we are able to have those conversations with kids, identify some of those problems, and then eliminate those barriers to learning. So I think one example of that was the free meal program that the state passed a couple of years ago.
Sure.
If students come to school hungry, we can't expect them to learn. And so making sure that every student has a level playing field there when it comes to meals. We've seen those results already, and we're going to continue to see those results of people who are able to be more engaged in the classroom, who aren't thinking about where's my next meal coming from because they know they're getting lunch today and they're going to get breakfast tomorrow.
Right.
And so I think, we have to focus on some of those outside of the classroom problems that unfortunately are impacting the way our students are learning. And then how can we as a school system partner with other organizations and other agencies to provide some of that support. I think that's going to be a huge step in us figuring out how we move through move through those challenges. It's not going to solve everything. We have to think about how we approach teaching now. I think COVID really helped shift everyone's thought process around engagement in learning and how our students don't have the attention spans that they did maybe when I was in school or when you were in school, or they're different. And so how can we provide programming and engaging lessons that help them think in different ways? I know for me, technology when I was in high school was like my flip phone. with T9. I did not have an iPhone in my pocket that I could pull out at any moment
Right.
and find the answers to any question that I had. So how can we like harness that positive parts of that while also making sure that we are building an education system that works?
All of our teachers that told us we wouldn't walk around with a video camera.
Correct.
In our pocket,
Like, you'll never have a calculator, so you need to know how to do this. And I'm
Right.
like, yes, thank you.
Right.
And yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned school lunches there, which is a perfect segue because obviously the school board can be contentious, and that is a contentious policy. How do you go about managing that sort of contention and conflict with amongst the school board members?
Yeah, so I think, we have a board right now that works well together. We don't all agree on everything all the time. And I think that's evident when we have some of our conversations around policies or around procedures. And so I think part of that is showing up respectfully and making sure that even if you and I don't agree on something, that I'm not coming to you and just lambasting you for what your beliefs are around that I'm able to come to you and have a conversation about, okay, here's the solution that we're looking for. Maybe we have different approaches to getting there. How can we talk it out, figure out how we can get there in a way that works for the 7 people sitting around the board and for the 10,000 students that we're going to serve. But it's not as easy as like, well, it's my idea, so I like it.
Sure.
Get behind me. I think we have to have those conversations, but they also need to be respectful. I also think that it's hard for us to, in this hyper-politicized world, a lot of what we're doing is values-based right now. And so making sure that we're having values at the board that I want to work alongside, that our community wants to work alongside, and to have those values that help guide our conversations, I think, is my hope in looking at a second term, that I can be serving on a board that has shared values and a shared approach for how we want to utilize those values.
All right, great. Along those lines of communication and keeping in contact, tell me a bit about how you encourage the school system to stay in communication with parents.
Yeah, so I think right now we have some great systems in place and tools in place to communicate with families. We have a series of newsletters that go out. We have stuff that goes up from the district level, from the building level, from the teacher level. And all of those resources are really helpful. Our district is a district that communicates. And we have room to grow. So, we did a community survey this past spring, and one of the things that people were hoping for is more communication from the school board. And so we're going to work on what that looks like. Can we create videos after each board meeting that help explain what we did? I think that would be a really great idea. Can we infuse some of our school board decisions into our staff newsletters and our parent newsletters so that they don't have to go searching for it? Everyone can go and watch a school board meeting live or recorded because it's a great Friday night, movie activity to go back and watch old school board meetings.
Sure.
It's what I love to do on Friday nights. But I think we can find ways to make it a little more accessible for folks to engage in the process. We have listening sessions. We have people who come and share their thoughts on what we're doing. But there's more that we can do as a district, I think, to engage with our families and engage with our community.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful, and if and when I'm reelected, that I'll be able to help shepherd some of those projects through.
Sure. So those listening parties that you have, obviously that's a great method to stay in contact with the parents. Do you feel that also kind of helps promote the idea of transparency? So there's a magnifying glass on what the school board is up to?
Yeah. I mean, I think, as a school board member, I've got 90,000 bosses. The citizens of this town elect me to be there, and I have a job to do that they elected me to do. And so I want them to come and tell me and the rest of us what we're doing, if we're doing it well, or if they want to see things that are different. So I think those listening sessions are a really valuable tool to do that. I also think that in this hyper-politicized world that we're living in, those listening sessions have sometimes turned into sort of referendums on topics at hand that maybe we as a board shouldn't be, talking through, or shouldn't have to talk through, I should say. For me, it's not a question if our students who have a different sexual identity than straight, it's not a question for me if they should be able to learn, or if they should have representation in their library books, or if they should be able to be in a space that is uplifting and welcoming. Those aren't values that I think should be compromised, but there are folks in our community who do. And so I think those listening sessions have sometimes turned into a mechanism for those folks to come and share those thoughts that I don't necessarily think we should need to discuss at the board table, but that we do. And so I think that those discussions have helped us lean into how do we decide our policies? How do we shape the work that we're doing, knowing that there are folks in our community who maybe think differently than I do.
Sure. And along those lines, what do you think, or what would you imagine in a perfect world would be an improvement at the way that the school board communicates with the community? What improvements do you think could happen there?
Yeah, I mean, I think we are a present board currently. Like, we like to be out and engaged and active and talking to folks and being at events and activities that help us shape our perspectives when we're making decisions. I think that we can spend some more time figuring out ways to actively engage in sharing our information out there. So like videos, like emails, et cetera, I think that we can figure out new and exciting ways to communicate with folks, and that's important. Being present and having that two-way communication is really helpful for the people who are able to do that, but not everyone's able to go to a Friday night football game at the new stadium.
Sure.
And so how can we help share information out to the masses and then give them mechanisms for communicating back with us? It's been fun over the last few weeks as the campaign has started to ramp up. People are calling me and asking me questions, and they're voters who are like, I see your yard sign around. I want to learn more about you. Tell me more about yourself.
Sure.
And I think that that's awesome. You know, on my way over here, I had one of those conversations today with a new couple who just moved into Friendship Village. And it was a really helpful way for me to think like, yeah, there are some people who will just pick up the phone and give me a call and ask me questions. But that's not everyone.
Sure.
And so I think we have to find some diversified ways of communicating with people.
Okay.
And I think that we have, the community has an appetite for that, and the district has an appetite for that too. And I know as a board currently we have an appetite for that.
Sure. So, but as they say, meet people where the people are, kind of thing. Okay. So looking ahead, after 20 years from now, you've been serving on the board. What do you think your legacy should be? What would you have liked to see accomplished?
That's a really great question. When I think about legacy, I think about the ways that my service will have impacted the community around me. In my first 4 years, I think we've had a lot of impact. We've had a lot of positive change in this district. We've adopted inclusive policies. We've changed inclusive calendars. We've adopted a new strategic plan that's going to help guide us for the next 5 years. We continue to invest in new programming and continued programming. We have to rethink some of the things that we're doing. And I think that we've done all of that. And so I think if I was to look at the first 4 years of my school board term, as my school board service, I'd think that like the commitment to making our schools welcoming, safe, and accessible is something that I am really proud of.
Sure.
And I know that we're going to have to keep doing that work because society's not going to stay still. So we're going to have to continue to shift. And I just want people to look at my service and say, like, yeah, he did fight for our students. He did fight for our families. And he helped make our schools a better place.
Okay, perfect. So in that explanation, you mentioned that you want to drive the school board and the school system to be responsive and to be, observant of what's happening, the ebbs and flows of the student body. How do you think that the school board can kind of get ahead of that?
Yeah, so I think part of that is making sure that we, the 7 of us who are sitting at the board table, are investing in opportunities to grow and learn professionally, to be present in some of our statewide and more local organizations that help talk about those issues. They help provide solutions. We've got some great resources right here in the Twin Cities that help us to know what's going on in the general landscape. What's happening in Bloomington is probably also happening in Minneapolis or in Lakeville or in Minnetonka. And so we have to be in communication with people. We have to take those proactive steps to engage in those things. We can't just say like, well, here's what we're going to do in Bloomington. Don't really care what's going on around us. I don't think that that's an appropriate way for us to move through that or to really be proactive or responsive, to what's happening. Sure. And so I think investing our time and energy into some of those things, and also paying attention to what's happening at the state and federal level. We have a legislative committee that really focuses on how we can engage with our legislators, how we can actively engage in the legislative process, passing new laws and new bills, public funds, et cetera. And so we have to keep doing that now more than ever. It's a scary time in public education. It's a scary time in a lot of the world right now. And so I think as elected officials, we have that duty to be present and to be in those conversations and to be thinking about, okay, we might have this problem in 2 to 3 years. How can we spend some time right now thinking about the steps we need to take so that it doesn't feel like, oh my gosh, we just stumbled on this problem that really has been there for years. And so I think having those proactive conversations, being engaged and involved in our legislative process, but also in some of those advocacy groups around us right now, is a great way for us to do that.
All right. So what would be your message to the Bloomington residents? What do you think is something that they really need to hear to kind of get behind you and get out there and be motivated to throw their support in the ring for your incumbency?
Yeah. Well, I think my record these last 4 years has, I think, shown that I'm someone who's committed to our schools. I'm a lifelong Bloomington kid. I graduated from Kennedy. I've spent my entire life dedicated to education here in Bloomington. And I think that has shown these last 4 years, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. I think I've proven that I'm someone who's willing to listen, who's willing to go and engage with people who think differently than me, and who's not afraid to roll up my sleeves and get into some messy, dirty work. And I know that we're going to have more challenges ahead. And so my ask for the Bloomington voters would be to send me back to the table so that we can continue to do this, to make that positive momentum. People right now are liking what's happening in the Bloomington public schools. There are challenges, for sure. There are things that we disagree on. But as a whole, Bloomington Public Schools is moving forward in a really great direction. And I think that we should keep moving in that direction, which is why I'm running for re-election. So my hope for the voters would be that they could see my record these last 4 years has been one of work and one of passion and one of community. And I want to keep doing that work.
All right. Well, Matt, thank you so much for joining me. I
Of course.
appreciate it. Is there anything that you think I missed or anything else that you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to do this. I love the creative ways in which we're trying to reach new voters. So thank you for doing this, and thank you for the Bloomington voters who, put me in this seat 4 years ago. And I'm looking forward to the chance to do it again. So thank you.
All right.